And welcome back to Another World Audiobooks. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really hope you're having a wonderful week. I know I'm having a wonderful week because we are on to chapter 18 of this book. That means there's only this and then 2 chapters left. So you know what that means. 1, we're going to find out who the tiger is. And 2, I need to hear from you. What book do you want to hear next? I take feedback from all listeners and definitely take it into consideration if you have a special book that you're just dying to hear on the podcast. But patrons obviously get first call on that. So patron feedback is definitely going to take precedence, but I'd love to hear from everybody. So get in touch, anotherworldaudiobooks@gmail.com. Patrons can contact me directly through Patreon, and I always reply to all the messages that I get there. I'd love to give shout outs to anybody who gets in touch. So get in touch. It's a great way to make this feel more like a conversation instead of me just staring at my computer and talking into a microphone. It's a lot more fun that way. So I love chatting with listeners. Thanks guys for listening. Thanks to our awesome patrons. Thanks for sharing the show. And without further ado, let's jump right into the next chapter of Meet the Tiger. Chapter 18. The Saint Returns. Biddle pushed the girl roughly into the cabin and slammed the door.
Now, let's have a look at you.
He was in his shirt sleeves, and the fact that he had loosened his tie and unbuttoned his collar for comfort in the sultriness of the evening increased the ruffianly effect of his appearance. John Biddle was one of the men who are only tolerable when conventionally dressed, and his round red face was no longer genial. His gaze stripped her from crown to toe, and the girl went hot under its slow, significant deliberateness. He stuck her revolvers in his trousers pockets, so that the butts protruded, and leaned against the door, folding his arms and smiling. His smile was introspective, and was not charming. And when he spoke again, he did not bother to infuse any mellowness into his voice.
"Well, well,"
he said.
"So, this is the immaculate Miss Home. Forgive my surprise, but one hardly expects to find the young ladies of the aristocracy behaving like this."
"As one hardly expects to find Sir John Biddle in such company and in such circumstances," she retorted.
He shook his head.
"There does happen to be a Sir John Biddle, but I am not he. I assumed his knighthood for the edification of Beckham, and now that we have said goodbye to Beckham, I don't mind being plain John Biddle again."
"I'm delighted to hear," said Patricia scathingly, "that you're resigned to your plainness."
She wasn't letting Biddle think that he was getting away with anything, though, in fact, she was afraid for the first time in her life. He was master of the situation, and he knew it. And her only hope for the moment lay in bluffing him that she knew better.
"I trust you will also become resigned to it,"
he returned smoothly.
"Otherwise, your married life will not be happy. You understand? My offer still holds good, which I think is very generous of me, though I'm afraid you have no choice. In less than an hour we shall be at sea, and this ship is under my command. I can only say that I'm very much obliged to you for turning up just when I feared I had lost you."
"You're assuming a lot,"
said the girl coolly. His fixed smile did not alter.
"As a businessman, I've no time to waste beating about the bush. You will marry me now, and there's an end to it. Maggs, the captain, can perform the ceremony quite legally. Incidentally, you should be grateful for my intervention. If I were not here, well, Maggs is a vindictive man, and I think he will bear you malice for the way you've just treated him. But I shall be able to protect you from the vengeance of Maggs, and in return for my kindness, I shall expect you to be a good wife to me."
Patricia's lip curled.
"My good man," she said, "I'd die first."
"You won't,"
said Biddle mildly, and something in the cold certainty of his tone froze her like a bitter wind. There was a Burberry thrown across the chair beside her, and she picked it up and slipped into it, having to invest her movements with an insulting unconcern, ignoring his very existence.
"I was just leaving my cabin as you shepherded Mag into the next door,"
Biddle explained, gloating.
"I guessed you would try to interview me next, but I felt that if I let things go according to your plans, you would have me at a disadvantage. a position which could only prejudice me for ever after in my role of your lord and master. A man should never give his chosen mate a chance to despise him."
"Then, when you've chosen your mate," said Patricia, "you'd better go and live on the other side of the world. I should think that would help enormously if she never saw you."
He leered.
"You're a spitfire," he said, "but I'll tame you."
"You're a liar," said the girl. "You'll do what the tiger tells you. I'd like to meet him, by the way. Will you take me to him, please?"
Biddle laughed and drew himself up.
"I am the tiger."
The girl looked him over contemptuously.
"I'll believe that, when tigers look like rats."
"You'll see,"
he answered, and looked at his watch.
"I'm afraid I must leave you now. The cargo's nearly all aboard, and we'll be sailing right away. I hope you didn't hit Mags too hard."
"Not hard enough, I'm afraid,"
she said calmly.
"I'm afraid he'll live."
He shrugged.
"The second mate can navigate, though he hasn't a ticket, and Mags will revive later. Au revoir, Patricia."
In a moment she was alone, and she heard the key turn in the lock and his footsteps receding towards the companion. She had no means of telling time, for she had left her watch in the pillbox. She spent a little while searching for a weapon, but she did not expect that he would have overlooked anything like that, and was not surprised when she failed to find one. Then she turned her attention to the porthole, but the opening was far too small for her to squeeze through, slight as she was. And that was all about it. She was fairly trapped. She sat down and coldly reviewed the situation. There had been no uproar of any sort, and so it seemed that Oris was safe. By that time he would be searching for her, and if she were lucky, she might be able to communicate with him. She held herself motionless to eliminate any sound inside the cabin, and strained her ears for any stealthy creeping past the door. She dared not run the risk of calling out, for it would be fatal to let the enemy suspect that she was not alone. And, while she listened intently, she went on thinking. If Oris found her, what could he do? He couldn't release her, though perhaps he would be able to pass her a gun with which she could deal with Biddle on his return. But the onus of the adventure would rest almost entirely with Oris and Algy, and regarded even in the most optimistic light, the odds against him were terribly heavy. She found herself daydreaming of wild, far-fetched possibilities of victory, and pulled herself together with a kind of mental violence, for she knew that that was a forerunner of despair, when practical schemes of winning out seemed so hopeless that one was forced, in a final effort to stave off panic, to imagine help falling from the skies. And, after a sternly practical inspection of the facts as they stood, the girl was compelled to admit that the chance of beating the tiger now was pitifully small. Then came the feeling of unreality, the feeling that the whole thing was too fantastic to be true, and that too she recognized for a false comfort, and lashed herself out of it. That way also defeat lay, to sink into a torpid reverie and wait for awakening to put an end to the horror. No, this was no ordinary nightmare. She'd entered the regatta in earnest, and the tide was running all against her. But she must keep on hoping against hope, whipping all her wits into service, refusing to surrender. That was the only alternative to accepting her fate as Biddle or the tiger dictated it. Resolutely, she shut out of her mind the contemplation of an end too horrible to vision in cold blood. Time passed. She could not tell how long she sat there, listening for Oris and waiting for Biddle, wrapped up in her thoughts. But Oris did not come. Had he been caught? But there had been no sounds of excitement, even since her capture, and so it seemed that Oris was still at large, whatever he was doing about her disappearance. That was some consolation. By that time, too, Algy should have recovered, and perhaps even then he and Oris were at work. So she brooded until it seemed hours since Biddle had left her. Then there stole in upon her senses a low humming noise, not so much heard as felt. For a moment she was at a loss to account for it, and then she realized that it was the vibration of the ship's motors. So, the cargo was all aboard, and the tiger was preparing to make his getaway. But by now, she had forced herself into a sort of dreadful passiveness. Abstractedly, she sought for, and found, all the concurrent tokens of departure. She looked down through the open porthole, and saw 2 men standing by the small winch in the bows. Someone below her called an order, and the winch rattled into action. She listened to the clanking of the anchor chain, and the jangle of each link as it grated over the teeth of the winding drum, hammered into her brain like the tolling of a knell. Then she heard men crossing the deck outside. The footsteps ascended the companion, and she heard them moving about the bridge overhead. There were 2 men, and Biddle was one of them. He called down a perfunctory query.
All clear?
And one of the men for'ard looked back and said,
Aye, aye, sir. Let her go,
said Biddle, and she heard the tinkle of the engine-room telegraph. The vibrations swelled to a drone, and she saw the black contours of the coast begin to slide across her field of vision. Coincidentally came the soft lapping of disturbed waters, another ring from the bridge, and the sea to port boiled whitely away in a growing smudge of moonlit milkiness. Again the tinkle of the telegraph, and the ship commenced to forge ahead as the last glimpse of land slipped away and left her staring dully at the wide horizon. The churning and splashing of their passage became more insistent. They were off. The tiger had scooped the pool. The girl sank onto the bunk and covered her eyes. In that moment, she tasted the dregs of defeat. Biddle came down from the bridge. He went to the door of the other cabin and thumped on the panels. He shouted,
Mags!
several times without apparently getting a reply. Then he crossed the deck, and she heard his key in the lock. She had composed herself by the time he had opened the door. He met the same acid, defiant stare, and felt a certain admiration.
Still just as sure of yourself?
He asked, and she nodded.
Quite, thank you.
He eyed her twistedly.
You're plucky, but I'm afraid it's wasted. You know Templar's dead.
Mr. Templar's dead, yes, but the game goes on.
She looked up at him steadily.
Even I may die. But there are others. You will never be able to say you're safe as long as there is a law and decent people to fight for it. For a little while you're winning, but in the end you can't win. Mr. Templar, after all, was only a pawn, and I'm no more than that myself. But even though you kill both of us, there are plenty of others to take our places, men who will never rest until they have led you to the gallows. Think of it, Biddle. Years will pass, and you will travel thousands of miles. Perhaps you will change your name and settle down at the other end of the earth. You will play your part, make yourself a respected and important man with all this money, and try to believe that the past can be forgotten. But in your heart you will know that nothing can be wiped out, and you will always be haunted by your fear. If you call that a victory, Biddle, you've won, but I wouldn't change places with you.
He was not impressed.
Do you really think you can scare me so easily?
He said.
If you like, you can come on deck and watch England fall behind us. You will never see England again. We have vanished into thin air, for all Bacon knows. Only one dangerous man has been left, and by now he will have been shot. Templar's servant. Where is help coming from?
When did you shoot Oris?
She inquired.
He was very much alive when I left him.
She was wondering if Oris had, after all, been captured, but she was giving nothing away until she knew, and Biddle's reply reassured her.
The pillbox will be raided at 2 o'clock, and Oris will be killed. That has been arranged.
Then you might give me a cigarette.
He proffered his case and watched her tap the gasper on her thumbnail, and he marked that her hands did not shake.
And a match, please.
He held the light for her, and then she leaned back again and puffed a cloud of smoke towards the ceiling.
Have you also arranged to kill Khan?
She questioned.
Khan? That old fool? Why?
Detective Inspector Khan, of Scotland Yard. That old fool. He went into Ilfracombe this afternoon to collect his posse. He knows the tiger. They must have had a breakdown somewhere, and that stopped him arriving in time, but that only means that by dawn the Atlantic fleet will be scouring the seas for you. I'll bet that surprises you, Bittle."
She spoke in quiet, even tones, and certainty that she wasn't bluffing hit Bittle between the eyes like the kick of a mule. He bent and stared closely into her face, but she looked back at him without faltering. Incredulously, he searched for the least hint of wavering in her gaze, but found only a mocking amusement. Conviction forced itself upon him against his will.
"Do you mean to say Khan's a detective?"
he said thickly.
"I do."
Every syllable was a taunt.
"And do you mean to say the tiger, that old fool, has had Khan living next door for months and never suspected him? Really, you seem to be a very stupid lot."
His face darkened, and for a moment she thought he would strike her. There was murder in his eyes. Then he controlled himself, but he stepped back as though he had received a blow.
"Thank you for warning me. I'll be ready for them,"
he rasped.
"But you'll never share the laugh. While I've got you for a hostage, they won't dare to touch me. You'll save us all, my beauty."
"My good man,"
retorted Patricia, with that glacial scorn which treated him as an offending flunky.
"I wouldn't lift a finger to help you if you were roasting in hell."
He bared his teeth.
"You'll change your mind when I set out to make you,"
he said. He flung open the door.
"Bloom!"
He waited, fuming, and then bellowed again.
"Bloom! Bloom, you blasted Dutchman! Here, you, go find Mr. Bloom and tell him I want to see him at once. Run!"
He slammed the door again and glowered down at her.
"My girl,"
he said venomously,
"you're going to be sorry you didn't accept my offer the night I made it."
"My man," she answered, "your humiliation will always be one of the pleasantest memories of my life."
"It'll be one of the last,"
he vowed. He leaned on the door with tightly folded arms, glaring at her evilly. But after one glance of superb disdain, she went on smoking and ignored him. The interval was a long one, and his cursing impatience raged higher with every minute of it. At last, a man came across the deck and knocked on the door. Bittle jerked it open and let out an exclamation.
"What the blazes?" "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't find Mr. Bloom." "Can't find him? You lazy swine! You haven't looked! The ship's small enough, isn't it? What in hell do you mean? Can't find him?"
"God's truth, sir, I looked everywhere. Lopez and Abba have been helping me. Mr. Bloom doesn't seem to be on board."
"Mr. Bloom is on board?"
snarled Bittle.
"Go and look again, and don't come to me with any more excuses like that."
And then came a startling interruption that made Bittle go white and sent the girl to her feet with her heart leaping madly. For from somewhere on the lower deck aft rang out a cheerful hail that could have shaped itself in only one mouth, and that the mouth of a man who had died that afternoon. "Ahoy there, Bittle!" Bittle shrank back, temporarily possessed by a superstitious terror. Patricia sprang forward, but he caught her and flung her onto the bunk with the strength of a maniac. "Pat!" sang out that cheery voice. "Are you all right?"
"Yes, Saint! Oh, Saint, is that you?"
"Sure!" Bittle wrenched the guns from his pocket.
"Get him! Don't stand about staring like a lot of stuck pigs!"
he screamed.
"Go to the armory! Heal yourselves! £100 to the man who kills him!"
The Saint's laugh pealed out as she had thought she would never hear it again.
"Can't you make it more than that, dearest cherub?"
And then Patricia saw him. He was standing up on the rail at the deck, and there were two men beside him. She thought at first that the third member of the party was Algy, until she saw the limp figure which Oris was holding like a shield was fully dressed. She heard a rush of feet on the decks below, and 4 men emerged on the upper deck and ran towards the stern. They were carrying rifles. The quartermaster or someone must have had a duplicate key to the gunroom. Then the Saint stepped down, and there were 3 men clustered in a little group by the taffrail.
"Tell them to be careful how they shoot, Bittle,"
warned Simon.
"This here sandbag we're sheltering behind is the long-lost Bloom himself."
Stop!
Bittle had collected himself. He seized the girl by the arm and dragged her out into the moonlight so that the saint could see her distinctly. And he held the girl in front of him so that her body was between him and the saint.
Be careful how you shoot, Templar!
Shouted Bittle.
Be careful even of what you say and do, because unless you and your friends surrender within 3 minutes, I'm going to kill Miss Home with my own hands.
Oh boy, things are getting real. The saint is back. I'll tell you what, you're missing out if you're not a patron, because you don't get to be in on the patron-only chat that's going on, so make sure to check that out. If you want to become a patron, it's really pretty cool. Free audiobooks, free merch, free awesome stuff, depending on what tier you select there on Patreon, and you can have, there's going to be chats between all the patrons, get to chat together and have direct line to me. I put out a fun little discussion the other day about everybody's guess on who the tiger was, so that's always fun to be able to have that kind of interaction and stuff. So please check it out if you haven't already. There are some really cool perks, like I said, to becoming a patron. So go check it out, anotherworldaudiobooks.com. You can click to sign up to become a patron or a citizen. I can't remember what button says on the website, but it's something like that. You'll get it. There's a big Patreon logo up in the top left-hand corner as well that you can click on. So anyway, thanks guys for tuning in and for sharing the show. Again, I know I talk about Patreon a lot, and I'm so grateful to our patrons, but I totally get it. If you can't become a patron, that's totally fine. All that I ask is that you just share the podcast. Who is somebody that you know who might enjoy a free audiobook? I think that's everybody, honestly. At least it should be, because audiobooks are awesome and people should be sharing them. So share it with somebody that you know and pass it along, and I will be eternally grateful for all your support in that way. So thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you next week.